By using our bank, we can start turning things around so that any money we borrow from ourselves. Any interest is paid back to ourselves. Right now, the SPP and the North American Union is basically run by 30 corporate powers in North America. If that's the way you want things to go, then you go with the status quo, which is the Liberals, the NDP, or the Conservatives, because that's the way they want to go. If you don't want to go there, well then, I'm your man.
Well, the Green Party, I have to say it again, would scrap SPP. We need some democratic renewal in our government if we are to be truly heard. We need to stop the influence of the whip so that party backbenchers actually serve you rather than their parties. And we need to abrogate NAFTA. Gary Long talked about public health care and social services, yet those are under threat because of NAFTA. Also, our bulk water, we might have bulk water export under NAFTA. Our energy supplies are under threat because of NAFTA. So we need to abrogate that and have a fair trade deal.
My question's for Brian E. Penn and Andrew Lewis. So I'm in favor of a carbon tax, but as a resident of BC, I already have one. So what's going to happen now? If there's a federal carbon tax, am I going to pay twice? Am I going to pay double?
Brian, you went first on the last double question. So, no, so come down and go first this time. Yeah, no, with Sharon. Okay.
Clearly, a carbon tax at the federal level would have to be take into account what's happening at the provincial level. And it's encouraging that our province is taking the lead on this. And what I would suggest, though, is that I'd like to just point out that I don't think the federal Liberal carbon tax is really adequate enough. I mean, if the Liberals believe that climate change and adjusting to a low-carbon economy is that serious, why are they starting at $10 a tonne? When Environment Canada did a study last year, they analysed what $50 a tonne would cost Canadians, and it would actually come out neutral for the economy. So that's where the Green Party stands.
So 2 points. It's starting off at $10 a tonne this year, and it's going to $40 per tonne in 4 years. So we're only $10 a tonne off the Green Party, and I think this is up. I mean, here we've stolen everything from the Green Party platform. What a great tribute to the Green Party, and now you've got an opportunity to get this policy in a government that is capable of doing something tomorrow. October 14th, it started.
Do I really want 30 seconds to comment?
Yeah, we'd like to have a quick one on this one. Yeah. Very quick. Ask two simple questions. Do you want a tax? Do you want a tax? Do you want a $2 deficit or $2 rebate on diesel? Or do you want to find something that you can do, something that will benefit you? Do you want an incentive to help you to turn your houses into completely hydro-free because you can do it? Solar panels on your roof, you might be feeding yourself back into the system and you get free heating, and what's more, you can now afford air conditioning.
Let me just respond on the carbon tax and why we're opposed to it. Again, you're going to have to pay twice, because there's issues with the carbon tax coming under the federal green shift that do not apply under the provincial plan. They're completely different. And although Mr. Dion's running around the country now, he's in Winnipeg, he's saying, you know what, maybe this carbon tax isn't good for farmers. We'll have an exemption. Maybe it's not good for truck drivers, we're going to have an exemption. Maybe it's not good for fishers, we're going to have an exemption. The reality is, I don't think it's good for any of you. And we need to take actions that will do greenhouse gases, not just impose higher taxes.
Most European nations, including the United Kingdom, as well New Zealand and Australia, now have mandatory labelling laws for genetically modified foods content. While here in Canada we still do not, even though polls have shown that the majority of Canadians feel it's their democratic right to know what's in their food. Bill C-517 to do this was voted down this year As a matter of fact, 4 Conservatives actually voted to support mandatory labelling. I want to know how you would vote if this bill to require such labelling is once again tabled in Parliament. And I want you to remember that the additional cost of labelling of a can of genetically modified corn would be negligible.
Jeremy, would you start?
Oh yeah. I'm totally, absolutely in favour of that. The labelling I'm talking about. Did you know that we sent a whole bunch of wheat to Ireland? They ordered wheat and they got genetically modified and they turned it back. When I was over there recently, every Irishman I found shook his hand and said, thank you very much. And they said, basically, why, if we ordered a Rolls Royce, would we accept a Volkswagen? And now, our present government is suing Ireland because we're trying to give them that Volkswagen. No.
Thank you very much. First of all, we actually, as a voluntary GMO labeling system now in Canada for GMO-free fruits, even that, but there are national standards. It is monitored. It's making sure that people put it. So there is a labeling system up there that is actually working. As far as how would I vote, in fact, you just acknowledged we had 4 members voted against the party, and they can. Aside, people say that you can't. But as a member of cabinet, I'm required to vote with the cabinet. That is our parliamentary system, and I cannot speculate what may or may not come before Parliament, but we would examine it and have a healthy, vigorous debate in cabinet. But at the end of the day, if I was back in cabinet, I would be voting the same as cabinet. Thank you.
I think what I heard Minister Ludd just say is that if something comes up which is threatening the health of this riding, the people in this riding, is that he will vote with cabinet and not for the people of his riding. And I don't intend to do that. Nobody, even if I'm in cabinet, I would step down if I felt that the people in this riding's health was put at risk. On the GMO issue, there's a commitment to labeling by Mr. Dion, and the national food policy is part of the discussions that he wants to have with all the MPs coming together. It made its way onto the National Policy Convention. And what they want to do is start thinking, instead about agriculture as an industry, let's have the Ministry of Food, so that the very first and foremost issue is that we're concerned about what we eat and our health, not in the
Well, I haven't seen any voluntary GMO labels on food, so it's not working. I would vote for the labelling on GMO foods, and I was disturbed to see that the Liberals actually did either abstain or vote against the opportunity when it came up in Parliament this spring. We need to also stop subsidising the GMO industry.
You spoke earlier about addressing issues of poverty in this riding. I'd like to hear you just elaborate a bit more about what that might look like.
We have to eliminate poverty in this country, and the targets that Bryony said, 30% or 50% below current levels, that for me is not adequate. In 1980, Chrétien said, let's get rid of poverty by the year 2000. And look at where we are. We still have the same rate of child poverty and general poverty in this country. And the gap between the rich and the poor is getting wider. So with we can resolve this quite easily through fiscal and tax regulations. We can eliminate income tax on those who earn up to $20,000. We can introduce income splitting for the middle class. There are so many ways that we can alleviate poverty through a healthcare system and through affordable housing.
If anyone would like to take 30 seconds to elaborate the plan.
So one has to look at the root cause of why these people are homeless. Why don't they have a home? Could it be because they don't have any money? Why would it, no, seriously, why don't they have any money? Could it be that because they're supposed to be kept there so that they can be controlled? Could it be that if we don't have these people who sleep indoors, we don't think to ourselves, oh my God, we're okay, we got home? Could that be what it's all about? How are we going to finance this business of giving these people homes? So we're going to do it two ways. First of all, we're going to use the Bank of Canada to make sure that there is some kind of opportunity for them to work. And secondly, we're going to help them get into that home because they will have the ability to come up with some money. Give them dignity, give them a reason to get out of the doorway, and I believe they will go.
We've actually increased funding on our homeless partner strategy of the province to over $3 billion, more than any other previous government. But even more importantly, our government's record. Since taking office, we have created 750,000 net new jobs across Canada. That's what people need. They want to work. They want to be able to earn an income. And that's why I kept coming back, why it's so important that we have a strong economy, why it's important that we control government spending, why we have to keep taxes down so we put more money back in the pockets of Canadians. Yes, absolutely. We're making investments for the working poor, as I call them, and also in our homeless strategy. And we're working with various partners out there in the community to deliver us various programs. But it's really important that we also create jobs for these people as well. They want to ensure there's jobs out there. They want to ensure that their children can fulfill their dreams and aspirations in their own communities, that there's jobs that are going to be there. And that's what our government's doing. Thank you.
Canada's economy has suffered the worst 2 quarters in 17 years, placed Canada on the brink of a deficit. We've increased spending by 15% in 2 years, and we failed to respond while 154,000 manufacturing jobs disappeared. I'm sorry, I don't buy the statement that we're doing well on our economics. And again, I need to add that Mr. Martin and Mr. Chrétien spent those years getting Canada out of debt. That is what they spent most of their time doing. On the question of poverty, Mr. Dion was saying the 30-50 plan is in the next 4 years. It's doable, it's got a plan, it's got economic feasibility. It's what the Liberals are good at, is being good, fiscally responsible people. So that's the reality. We can't get 100% in the next 4 years, but we can get 30-50. 30% of all poverty and 50% of all children. And part of that is also to attack the real poverty of a disproportionate number of children in Aboriginal communities, and the Kelowna Accord is the way that we're going to do that.
Thank you all for coming to this afternoon. My question, though, is for Mr. Nunn and the Conservative Party. It has been widely reported that Stephen Harper has instructed all of the candidates not to talk directly to the press. And this is a freedom of speech issue for me, and with all respect, seems anti-democratic to me. And I'm wondering how all of you collectively can justify accepting this sort of a dictum from Stephen Harper.
Well, first of all, and I appreciate your question, I'm going to tell you, it's absolutely not true. It's absolutely false. You can talk to the reporters that are here from the Driftwood. I've been a member of Parliament for 11 years, and recently when they call, I return their calls personally. You can ask reporters here from the Driftwood. They've got my personal cell phone number, and they call me directly. The Prime Minister was in Victoria 2 days ago. The national media came up to me and said, "Can we scrum?" I said, "Sure, let's go scrum." And I talked to every one of them. I return their calls. So I can assure you that the Prime Minister has not put out anything saying we can't talk to the media. That's absolutely false. And you have no word of that. Thank you.
I have a question.
It'll come up.
Which I guess first will go to Gary, because I think he's most familiar with this. And if your government were to form the next government, I have a question on international treaties and the principles around how we address those treaties, and in specifics in this situation, I'll use the Pacific Salmon Treaty ratification as an example, where the Department of Fisheries and Oceans is proposing selling our access to our fair and equitable share of resources in fish to allow U.S. fishermen and Bonneville Power to produce more power. For the tune of $30 million, we would be giving up hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars worth of our access to fish as Canadians.
Would you frame it as a question?
The question is, a coalition of community representatives, First Nations, NGOs, and fishermen have asked your government to have an independent analysis done of this proposal, rather than the Department of Fisheries and Oceans, who even you have said are out of control and not accountable. Would you, when it comes to international treaties such as this, where we're proposing selling our access to our natural resources, ensure that we have that independent analysis done and that there is full debate in the House and in committee prior to any impact being put onto the stakeholders within the region?
The Prime Minister has made a commitment, and he has followed through on that. Before we ratify any international treaty, it will come before the House of Commons for a vote. And that's an obligation that he has lived up to. And I can assure you that we're not in the interest of selling off our national interests. Someone brought up earlier water to the United States. The Prime Minister has made an unequivocally clear statement that that would not happen. He's done that during the campaign any more than we would be selling our fish off in the interest of power. There are existing treaties. Some of them have been there long in place before we took office. I don't think that's an issue with this one that I'm aware of, but I will follow it up. But every single international treaty that we sign does come to Parliament for a vote, and it's something that we have followed through. Thank you.
Thanks, Gary. Brian?
When this particular issue was drawn to my attention, it sent a very strong warning message to me. This is a very, very dangerous precedent. It means that we are starting to sell our natural resources, the rights to them, and it suggests to me that this current government is more interested in negotiating with our partners than our trading partners than our communities. It's not putting our local communities, our local fishers, our local First Nations as the primary the guardians of what our resources. So this to me was a very dangerous precedent, and I don't believe I even got an answer from Mr. Lunn about what he's going to do about this particular issue in the Pacific Salmon Treaty.
Andrew?
I would just like to bring up another international treaty that I think we should be signing, and that is the Rotterdam Convention on Asbestos. And for twice now, the current Conservative government and the previous Liberal government would not sign the treaty on asbestos to list asbestos as a toxic material, and therefore giving countries such as India prior informed consent. They have to accept our products which go into the communities and create misery and cancer and untold health problems for people for who knows how long. Asbestos lives forever in the environment.
I can't quote the source, but I did remember seeing this a very short time ago that Canada right now has got something like 35 trade unions with different countries in effect, or coming into effect, are being negotiated right now. Prime Minister Harper said the other day, on the 16th of October, 2 days after our election, he is going to sign a new deal with the European Union. Now my question to Mr. Lunn is, how the heck is he going to do that? It's got to be discussed in Parliament first.
This mic.
Yeah. I'm very cynical about politicians. But like when you're saying that NAFTA was a good thing, since NAFTA, homelessness has risen and billionaires have risen too. I know where are your friends. My question is there any one of you, because we had a lot of cuts with all the trades and free trades, I prefer fair trade, but it's free trade we have now. We have cuts and everything. But is there anybody here who's going to have the guts to cut the number of billionaires by 100%?
Andrew, do you want to try to take on the billionaires?
We do need to narrow the gap between the rich and the poor. It's certainly getting out of hand, and the Green Party is proposing to introduce another tax bracket starting at $150,000 per year. So hopefully that'll take care of the billionaires.
There are several countries around the world that have a flat tax system. I think New Zealand was when they started with 15% flat tax for everybody. Now if you're a billionaire, that means a heck of a lot of money gets paid in tax, right? If you're sleeping in a doorway, you don't pay anything. That seems to me to be a very equitable tax. And by doing that, eventually, as in New Zealand, I believe it's down to 7% now. I'm not absolutely sure on that, but I know it's greatly reduced from what it used to be. Billionaires? Well, gee, I wish I was one, and then I could tell you how to get rid of me.
You know, let's look at just pull one other example. Bill Gates, who's probably one of the wealthiest men and worth more than multi-billions. You know, that man has created jobs around the world. He has donated more for humanitarian causes than most Western governments, and has done a lot of good. And so, you know, we can sit here and talk about how we don't like people to get rich, but they are part of our economy. I think more importantly, sir, what we want to do, ensure young people have jobs. Young people, when they get out of school, that there will be jobs that they can fulfill their dreams and aspirations. That's what's important, so that they can go on. But it's easy to sit here and criticize people that are very successful. But don't forget the good that they do as well, and what they contribute to the economy, what they give back to mankind. I would suggest that they're not all bad like you may. 100%. Thank you.
I think what we're talking here about is whether we have a government that allows unregulated, unbridled capitalism versus a government that recognizes that we're a pluralistic society, that puts checks and balances and regulates where it's appropriate. What the Liberal government is looking at is bringing a whole new way that we look at the economy. By providing constraints like tax and pollution and waste, and regulating things like the gouging that goes on within the oil and gas industry, and removing subsidies, which is how these people are getting very, very rich. What we're doing is we're creating opportunities for young people to get into businesses that we can all feel very happy about, because we're no longer pitting billionaires versus the homeless. What we're talking about is we're developing economies that have the environment and social justice issues at the heart of the bottom line.
My question concerns the issue of daycare. Mr. Lund, you referred to the $100 taxable income that you are handing out for children under 6, and when faced with an $1,100 a month daycare bill, my family decided it was not feasible for us to have both of us working, and decided to have one of us stay at home. I'm wondering if any of the parties are considering income splitting for families to encourage people to stay home and raise their children. And also, what are you planning on doing about the daycare issue for those families who can't afford that? Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. I can't tell you if we're considering income splitting. You should know we've got income splitting in for seniors. I think it would be a great thing for families, but that's something that would be announced by the Prime Minister, not by me. Listen, with respect to daycare spaces, we've given $250 million to the provinces to create daycare spaces. So we're actually creating daycare spaces. We've also got a program with employers to create daycare places in the workplace, and to get up to $10,000 tax deduction for creating those daycare spaces in the workplace. Those are real things that are happening. The Liberal government in the past had a lot of talk, but they never delivered. They never created daycare spaces. You know, we've actually delivered these funds to the provinces in addition to our $1,200 universal child care benefit. So is there still more work to be done? Absolutely, but these are real results that we're getting. Thank you.
Well, I've got 4 grandchildren who need daycare, and I know they're not getting enough money. Their parents are not getting enough money to do it. What's out there just isn't adequate. And again, we come back to this thing of, it's always to do with money, money, money. We're so controlled by money. We need money, we want money, we have to have money to do all these things. And then every time we try and make a dollar, somebody comes along and says, oh, we need some more tax, we need some more tax, we need some more tax. Let's make the jobs that we have local jobs that are really valuable, that pay what they're worth instead of just minimum wages, so that we can have one worker families for families that are very young, so that kids can go home from school and there'll be mum or dad waiting for them. That's what we should be aiming for, not passing them off on some daycare somewhere or some babysitter. We need to get back to the real family values where the kids can come home and there's somebody waiting for them who is their mother or father.
We talk a lot about financial deficits and the squeeze on families, but we also live in an increasingly time-constrained world where we all seem to be racing harder and harder and faster and not getting anywhere. And really, as families, we need more time with our children, and our government can help. And one of the proposals that the Green Party is suggesting is income splitting for families. It would cost $3 to $5 billion, and it would come from part of the carbon tax revenues. That will enable families to spend more time with their kids. I know for myself, 1 year, my family and I, we spend $12,000 on childcare. And so $100 a month is insulting. It would have enabled my wife or I to have spent more time at home. We could spend more time volunteering in our community, running for politics.
Before the government was brought down, the Liberal government was brought down, Ken Dryden crafted an incredible plan which was going to provide spaces for families for daycare. It was called the Ken Dryden Accord, and it had all sorts of wonderful facets to it, but it was creating spaces. I go not door to door, and I'm finding women that are, and fathers that are number 200 on the waiting list. It's creative, it's crazy. We can't be a nation that has got people waiting for 5 years to get their children on a daycare list, and the kids are going to be grown up. It's crazy. There's a plan. Vote for me. We had to go to the extent when we built a daycare. So who do you want in government? Someone who's gone through it with their 2 children and knows how important it is, or somebody that still thinks that $100 is going to solve the problem, a month. It's crazy.
Hi, I have an open question for all the candidates. There's been a lot of fuss about private clinics and healthcare customers as clients, and I was just wondering what you would say to your voters who might be concerned that we're moving towards an American fee-based healthcare system, and also if your party or you have any ideas on healthcare reform, we might like to hear. Thank you.
That's a very big question. Okay, privatization. I come from a medical family. My father, my brother, my sisters, sister-in-laws. This is a topic that I've thought long and hard about. One of the biggest central platforms of the Liberal Party is prevention, 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 prevention. If we don't tackle that part of the equation, we're going to continue to see escalating healthcare costs. Right now, what the provinces are committing 50% of their budgets. It's crazy. One of the reasons is that we're getting an increase in chronic diseases, diabetes, asthmas, cancers. Largely, these are environmental problems, bad air quality, children that aren't getting opportunities to get outside and healthy. So what the whole purpose of this action plan that Mr. Dion is suggesting is that we're creating a new economy that rewards activities, economic activities, and the reduced consumption of cheap energy that's contributing to our prevention, our health issues. There's a whole lot more.
Yeah, this is the single largest expenditure of government. When we took office, we were transferring $25 billion to the provinces for healthcare. That has increased today to $41.7 billion. And so, you know, there's a lot of issues that need to be dealt with. In fact, it's Greenie's colleague, Keith Martin, who's advocated for a two-tier style healthcare system. What we need to do is we need to look at the money that we are spending and make sure that it's getting down to the patients. You know, we've contributed $624 million to cut down patient wait times. We've got agreements with all the provinces. We are doing that. But we need to ensure that there's accountability and that we're getting results. This is an enormous amount of money. It goes through very complex, for all the provinces, you know, administer health care. And there's no silver bullet in all of this. We do have waiting lists coming down. And when the system works, it does work marvelously. You know, you talk to people that have had to go in for cancer or heart treatments, and they get in right away. But this is a lot longer than a 30-second discussion, I can promise you that.
Thank you.
Well, I guess it's me, 30 seconds, a minute. It's almost impossible to cover it under this. But what it really boils down to is if you have all these private clinics, who's benefiting from it? The people with money and the corporations who own the clinics. But what about you and I? I'm just about broke, so do I benefit from it? No. Do I get any money at all for my naturopathic beliefs? Because I don't believe that anybody should have to take drugs or anything like that. I look after my body naturopathically. Do I get any help? No. So why can't we get that help? We talk about huge amounts of money without healthy people in the country who are well educated, who have jobs, who have security, have sovereignty. It's all mute. We need to get back to the basics, really down to the deep, deep basics. What's it all about? Healthcare is a subject which you can talk about for hours. I don't have hours.
The Green Party supports the 5 principles of the Canada Health Act, and we believe it needs to remain in the public domain. Our healthcare system is a public good. We own it. Let's keep it that way. However, we do run the risk of a NAFTA challenge if from American for-profit business, and so we need to guard against for-profit healthcare setting up in this country, because that is going to undermine what we already own. There are many areas which we could talk about healthcare. One of the fastest rising areas of healthcare costs is pharmacare. I believe we need a national pharmacare program to keep control of the health of our drugs.
Thank you. Kimber.
Okay, it's not very often that I actually get to thank the Conservative Party for something they've done, but in my role of victim services, they've done one good thing. They have an ombudsman now for victims of crime, and so if you have a problem with the criminal justice system, you have somebody to speak on your behalf. But on the flip side, they got this get tough on crime position that I don't particularly understand, because when I work at the police station, what I see is people with addictions, mental illness, homeless people all being criminalized because of social issues. And so I already know what Gary Lund's response is going to be to that. So I'd like to hear from Andrew Lewis and what he would do around those social issues, mental illness and addictions, and those things that contribute to crime.
The social issues, I believe, that contribute to crime are things are things like poverty. That is why we need to eliminate poverty in our society, and that is why the Green Party is so focused on that in our program. Another area we need to deal with is drugs and illegal drugs in a society. We need to treat addiction not as a criminal issue, but as a health issue.
Do you want to take it next?
Oh, do you want?
Yeah, you want to do it next?
Yeah, we've been, the Liberal Party has been sitting on many forums and task forces looking at the whole question of homelessness, addictions, the question of mental illness and the relationship between mental illness and addictions and homelessness. There's incredible research that's been done now. There's many models all around the world for what works. So the Liberal government is committed to finding out best practices, what works, listening to the local communities because they know best in terms of where the first person that we come to is we're going to go and talk to Kimberly because those are the people that understand the issue intimately. No, we're not going to stand at the top and dictate what needs to be done from somewhere in Ottawa. It's going to be me talking to Kimberly, talking to the people that are in SWOA, talking to the people that are in all the different social services, and then taking that message back to Ottawa.
Sorry for that. No, we are getting tough on crime, and we absolutely believe it's the right approach. When we have people who are committing violent crimes with guns, yes, we're imposing mandatory prison sentences. People who convict multiple repeat offenses of home invasions and invade the most personal space of people, yes, absolutely. These people, we need to toughen up our justice system. People are doing street racing. We're getting tough on white-collar crimes, on money laundering. You bet we are, and we absolutely think it's the right approach. But we're also putting, with respect to drugs, we're putting more money into rehab. If people want help, we want to ensure that there's help for them, that it's available. I practice in the youth criminal justice system, and there's some very troubled people in the system. And sometimes when you get them in the system on probation, you can actually get them into the help they need. You can get them into programs that they need to get out of that cycle. So yes, I think it's the right approach.
My question is how much of this is provincial and how much of it is federal? We're treading on pretty dicey ground here because the provincial government has a lot to do with this. And my idea about the role of the Canadian federal government here is to offer support and guidance to the provincial government. So it's all very well to have these standards right the way across the country, but each province has its own unique problems that don't necessarily form under that one standard. There has to be some kind of ability to say, okay, BC has a huge homeless problem in Vancouver. That's where we need to help. This is where we need to help the provincial government or the city of Vancouver. We don't really need, as a federal government, to get involved in the nitty-gritty. We need to have maybe some kind of umbrella system, but we need to leave this particular subject, I believe, to the provinces. But I will say one thing. I do not think that talking about people putting kids in jails we don't necessarily have is the right thing to do in an economical situation that we have now.
My question is for each one of you. What will your party do to right what has gone so terribly wrong in Canadian Omar Kadar's case?
Yes. You can take that one first.
Yes. Omar Kadar faces very serious challenges, very serious charges of terrorist-related activities. He has received all consular services from the Canadian government, and we will receive a trial and receive a due process. But he is facing serious allegations, and our policy, I would like to add, has not changed one bit from the Liberal government. I've been listening to this up here on stage. Greenie says one thing, And I can tell you the record up there in 13 years. Omar Khadr has faced very serious allegations, was put in Guantanamo by the Liberal Party of Canada, was facing these serious charges, and we have maintained that but ensured that he has received the consular services. So regardless what Beanie is going to say, you should think of the facts, and that is exactly what has happened.
Well, let's hear what Brian wants to say.
Wow. Thank you. I think you all know that a government that has compassion, has the best interests of pushing forward Canada's international reputation that has been a long-standing reputation as peacekeepers, as international leaders in setting up round-table forums for discussion on complicated, complex international issues. This is what Canadians believe us to be. There is no way that we should be leaving people to be tortured in prisons in Guantanamo. I'm going to argue with Gary on the basis that I think that he's misrepresenting what the Liberal government did. Thank you.
Next. Yeah. All right, my understanding is that that young man was Afghan, basically, and he was living in Canada. And he went home to try and do something to help protect his homeland. He was shot, he threw a grenade and he killed an American soldier, and now he's been sitting down in Guantanamo, absolutely abandoned by the entire political system in Canada. And I think that is absolutely appalling. And I would like to know how many of the American forces who have also killed thousands of people in Afghanistan are being sitting in the same place for something which to me is much more heinous than protecting what could be your homeland.
This is a serious issue. Canada seems to be we've forsaken our diplomatic muscle around the world as we're leaving not just Omar Khadr to struggle in an illegal court, but there are other Canadians suffering as well around the world. And we need to bring him home. He's a Canadian citizen facing charges in an illegal court.
Yeah, I think there's something that almost everybody in the room knows. We're facing a global climate emergency, and we're not talking about that. We need the federal government to intervene for us to save this country and the planet. And there's something that we can do, the federal government can do, and if they haven't got the ability now, as elected, you could get it. And that is so simple, won't cost any money. We'll lower the speed limit all over Canada. Bring it down to 90 or 80 and keep it there. There's no reason anybody should drive any faster. You can save money on the healthcare system, there'll be fewer accidents, and people will probably enjoy life a little bit better than they are now. Thank you.
Andrew, do you want to take this and keep it to 30 seconds this time around?
The climate crisis is something that we've been aware of for at least 20 years. It's been a slow motion unfolding. Now, as we become more and more aware, it's clear that we have lacked the leadership, and we currently lack the leadership to do anything about it. That's what we need. It's true leadership to use the myriad of solutions that are already being used out there around the world that are helping to reinvigorate our other economies. Why are we being left behind?
30 seconds. Anybody here heard of the Zen motor car which is manufactured here in Canada? We can't even drive the damn thing in this province because it doesn't go fast enough. But they are developing a battery down in Texas, which apparently will give this thing a radius of 140 kilometers at 70 miles an hour. You plug it in for 10 minutes and she's ready to go again. Where is that motor car?
Thank you, Madam, for your suggestion. You're absolutely right. Lowering the speed limit has a huge impact on the emissions that go up. It is provincial jurisdiction. I just want to talk, though, you need to talk about climate change, and you're right. This is a serious issue. And I've been sitting up here today, I listened to the answers from Bryony. Did I get it right? Bryony. You know, she said, we're removing the subsidies, like on the oil sands. She called it the tar sands. You know what? They actually, the Liberal Party brought them in. Accelerated capital cost allowance for the oil sands. It was our Prime Minister who announced the phase out of those subsidies. All the oil sands projects have to impose carbon capture and storage. This is real action. It's taking real results. But we're down to that 30-second bell.
Okay, there's been no effect because these are aspirational goals as opposed to hard caps. In terms of innovation, that's what we're looking at. We're looking at how we're going to get ideas that are going to actually curb emissions. The green shift has been proven to curb emissions. It curbed emissions in Denmark, brought them right down to levels that were consistent with what the Kyoto targets were in Sweden. The other thing that no one's talked about in any of the parties, but Mr. Dion is putting it out there, it's the fact that we've also got to look at our living carbon. 50% of the boreal forest will remain intact.
I have a more domestic question for all the candidates. In common with many parents on Salt Spring, even though I'm old, I was going to say father, I'm not allowed to say that. I have a 19-year-old son in second-year university. In this country, in UBC at least, the cost of tertiary education, secondary education is $16,000. I've just had another increase in tuition fees of $2,000 a year. So now I have to find $18,000 a year after taxes. In Germany, to send a child to a secondary university education is 500 euros. In France, it's free for basic. You can pay more for higher education. And my question is, what, if any, programs do any of the candidates propose to increase the intellectual inventory of this country, which is going to be vital to solve future problems, by allowing more people who are bright enough to get into university? Thank you.
Jeremy, you haven't gone first for a long time, so take it away.
Okay, I don't have very much time with this, but you know, not so many years ago, university education was something within the reach of everybody. We now have a massive debt, which we have to try and pay off. We have interest on that debt that amounts to $2,000 per person for every man, woman, and child in the country. How can we possibly, under the existing financial arrangements that we have, thanks to these two parties here, possibly afford to help people who deserve to go to university? Come on, it's time to wake up. We need to get away from this whole business of spending money we don't have. We need to use the Bank of Canada to help these young people to get the education they deserve, they need, and absolutely we need them to have it so that we can move forward. The Bank of Canada, as I said before, is our bank. We're not using it except to prop up places that down south that are going nuts, or banks here that have got into trouble. We're not using it for the people of Canada. We're not using it for the education of young people in universities.
Education is the key for Canada's future. We need to invest more in education. We need to invest more in expanding places in our higher education and training facilities. We need to reduce the debt burden for students. One way we can do it is guarantee 50% of tuition fees are returned to the student when they graduate. We need to target grants and bursaries for students. This is the way that we're going to actually help parents and help students become Canadian citizens who can contribute to our economy and create a vibrant economy and livable communities.
So I have a 17-year-old going to university next year. I have a vested interest in this answer. Right, under the current regime, students have to earn more than $20,000 before their education tax credits come in. That's going to be changed so that they can apply, they can replace these credits on earnings less than $20,000. That's a critical point. Secondly, there's going to be a 20-year, $25 billion education endowment fund for very essential student bursaries. All students will be eligible for a $5,000 guaranteed student loan, regardless of parental income. And there's going to be, and this is very important too, they're going to extend the interest-free grace period from kids coming out of university. It's not going to be 6 months anymore, it's going to be 2 years to give them the grace to get into employment and start paying back this terrible debt load. And you can be sure, oh, finally, there's an increased support for research and development, $500 million committed to research and development, and that's going to open up a lot of opportunities for kids while they're going to school.
Our government, we've done a few things already. We've exempted scholarships from taxation. We've brought in tax credits for books and other materials needed for university. And we've overhauled the Canada Student Loan Program to ensure that it's more accessible and right across the board, as opposed to in the past. There was some scholarship programs that were going out to very select few, weren't reaching enough students. You know, the reality is, you're absolutely right, education is very, very expensive compared to when I went to school, and it's challenging for young people. I was able to go out and work in the summer and earn enough to pay for my own university, and unfortunately that's tough for kids today. But we are making changes, we're moving in that direction, we're working with the provinces, making those investments to make education and, you know, post-secondary education available for everyone who wants to be there. Thank you.
All right.
In this riding, Green voters are being asked to vote strategically to help defeat the Harper government. And I know, Brian, that you support proportional representation, and we've spoken on that. But I've talked to the Liberal Party headquarters in Ottawa repeatedly, and I have scoured the website, and I can see no support at all for proportional representation. And in fact, they say the opposite. So I'm wondering if your position is wishful thinking, or if it will in fact actually happen.
When Mr. Dion made the agreement with Elizabeth May to swap candidates in each other's riding, he also committed in that letter, and it's available for, and I can forward it to you, to open up the debate on proportional representation. And I think further is that I'm committed, and it's very open that I'm committed to going into, and I'll be in caucus and committee, whatever, to furthering the debate on proportional representation. Until you have a mainstream political party that's got people within it that are willing to get this debate there, it's just going to be people calling from the outside. That is why, it's one of the main reasons why I decided to join the Liberal Party, is that we need a voice for proportional representation within government, and it is on the public record.
But they're saying the opposite.
It's on the public record. Well, we can talk about it later.
Does anybody else like to comment? Yeah, okay, Andrew.
It's all very well for Dion to offer vague promises about pro-rep with Miss May, but there is nothing in that platform. The Liberal Party voted against electoral reform at their last convention. So until we elect Green MPs to actually push the agenda, I don't believe we're going to get any concrete progress on this front.
We have tried to make changes without changing the Constitution. We have brought in 8-year term limits for senators. The Liberal Party of Canada has blocked that bill. They have stopped us from trying to appoint elected senators. So I don't believe it. I think you're absolutely right when you say wishful thinking. I've been listening to that all afternoon. I mean, Brian said these might be aspirational goals as opposed to hard caps, referring to our plan on emissions. for CO2. We actually have a hard cap of 20% by 2020. But you want to talk about aspirational goals. If you look at the record of the Liberal Party, don't take my word for it. Look at what they didn't do for 13 years. You know, Brian, you talked about the Kent Dryden Accord. That, your words, he was going to create spaces. They were there for 13 years, and they didn't do it. They didn't get it done. Greenhouse gas emissions rose by 35% when the Liberals were in power, and they didn't get it done. Why should we believe them now?
Because you opposed it.
Jeremy? Go ahead.
I think we're forgetting something here. Are we voting for parties and leaders? Or are we up here asking you to vote for us?
Okay, the question from this one.
My question is for all the candidates. This might seem like an old issue to a lot of people, but it's still very important to me, and I don't think it'll ever go away. And that's goes back to the reason why Canadian troops are in Afghanistan. And so my question is, do you personally, and does your party, or would your party, support an international investigation, say a royal commission, into the events of September 11th, just to make sure we're not there for the wrong reasons? Thank you.
Absolutely, we've been asking for that ever since the darn thing happened. We do not believe that what came out of that so-called commission report was even close. And I personally I'm blown away by the fact that most people don't even know what Building 7 was. They don't even know it came down just like a... Why? Simple question. Has anybody ever heard about that high-rise building in Spain that burned for 3 years and it was almost identical in structure to the Twin Towers? Pardon me, not 3 years, 3 weeks. 3 weeks it burned and it never fell. It was gutted, sure, but it didn't fall. There was something horribly wrong with that whole program of what happened on that day. We had 90-year-old people that died there, Canadians. We don't know why they died. We do know that as a result of that, United Nations had their arms twisted and went into Afghanistan. My personal feeling is we should never have gone in the first place, but if we had, we should have been out within a year because we knew it wasn't right.
Right on.
Again, you can, this is multiple UN resolutions. There was 2 prime UN resolutions that asked NATO forces to go into Afghanistan. This is a UN mission. There was multiple UN resolutions. There's 35 member NATO countries on the ground. So no, I don't think you should have an inquiry into the United Nations and into the resolutions that they passed. I think you should focus on the amazing work that has been done. And talk to the Canadian men and women that have served us so proudly over there. Talk to the ones that have come back and ask them if they're making a difference. Yes, there has to be an end to this mission. This will be the longest serving conflict the Canadian forces have ever served in. That's why our Prime Minister announced a full withdrawal by February 2011. But it has to be orderly, and you have to give our allies time to respond. That is the responsible thing to do. Thank you.
I think fundamentally Canadians have felt that we've lost our way. We used to be given a tremendous sense of pride in that we were independent thinkers, we weren't following the American model, that we were capable of providing leadership on many, many issues. I think Canada has lost its way. And I think that what is being offered on October 14th is an opportunity for a government that is open to debate, open to discussion, and open to determining what is our way with future conflicts in the world. I mean, at some stage we do have to question the fact that we are now killing the very people that were armed a generation ago. And that does raise questions about strategy, not only at the UN table and in NATO, but just internally. So I think what that begs is that Canadians want to get re-engaged in the debate about our international role. And I think it can cover all of these, everything that we've, experienced in the last since 9/11.
Do you have a question, Mike?
I'll just very quickly say, your question was about...
I'm sorry.
Yeah, it was a question about an international commission on 9/11, and I'm afraid I can't really answer that because I'm not sure I achieved. I would be happy to talk to you afterwards about that. And as for Afghanistan, we went in, the Liberals took us into Afghanistan. I believe it was because it was a sop to the Americans because we didn't go into Iraq. So we went to Afghanistan, and it's been a mission that's lost its way right from the very beginning. We have to sort it out now. Now that we're there, we have to sort it out. I see that the Conservatives have flip-flopped for a long time. They were saying, you can't set dates, we've just got to stay till the mission's finished. Well, now perhaps they realise that this is a dead end for Canadians and we need to get out as soon as possible.
Andrew, I apologise, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Go ahead, please.
Hi, I just wanted to start off by making a statement back to the childcare. I've recently been forced to turn down a very, very good job on this island because of the lack of childcare. For registered daycares on Salt Spring Island, there are 4 children under the age of 1 that can be cared for. My economic status has been dropped because of the lack of childcare. So how can you tell me that you are really making changes for us? My question is regarding the North American Union. I am wondering where you each stand on this issue, and if you really believe joining a country that is going into an economic recession, do you really believe that this is a solution to help our country?
Andrew, would you start on this one, please?
Well, yet again, we come back to SPP, which of course we need to scrap. The North American Union is about an incremental integration between Mexico and the US and Canada. And as we need to diversify our economy, we need trade relations that are fair and protect our sovereignty. And we're losing that. And we're risking being sucked into the orbit of a collapsing economy down south.
Personally, I would love to see Mr. Dion and Mr. Obama sit down with full transparency and talk about how, as national leaders and how, as a collective, we are going to get ourselves out of the 3 biggest challenges facing humanity. A trading partner forum for discussion is not inherently a bad thing. I absolutely welcome people sitting down and figuring out how are we going to solve these problems. When you have leaders that are open, that are transparent, that have a keen intellect about how to solve problems and engage many, many people around them to come up with solutions, then you have a collective working for the issues that are at stake. I don't want to throw away a forum for discussion. I want to throw away bad leadership, lack of transparency, and an autocratic, ideological government.
Thank you very much for your question. First of all, I can tell you there's no North American Union whatsoever. This is absolute utter nonsense. World leaders, they sit down, they discuss issues with respect to their respective countries. Look at the record of our Prime Minister standing up for Canadian sovereignty. He's the first Canadian Prime Minister ever to take an interest in the North. We're now requiring all ships entering the Northwest Passage into Canadian waters for the first time have to register with Canadian officials, the Canadian Coast Guard. This has never been done before. You've never had a stronger Prime Minister on the world stage standing up for our sovereign interests. Yes, world leaders sit down at the conclusion of these meetings They do release a communique, what they discussed. Our Prime Minister at the recent meetings has discussed everything from our softwood lumber agreement to issues with passports across the U.S. border and getting extensions for that, issues that are of concern to us. The Windsor Bridge, ensuring that we can have adequate trade moving across that. Those are what the issues that they do discuss. And they are as transparent and public at the end of these meetings, but obviously the meetings are held in private, as they always have been under the previous Liberal government as well. Thank you.